You're listening to the weekly Dartscast, and now your co-hosts, one-time UK Open Riley's qualifier participant Alex Moss, and the one-time VIP guest of Barry Hearn, Burton DeWitt. 180! Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast. Alex Moss here, back as always with Darts statistician Burton DeWitt. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. We're into the final stretch of 2020. We've got 5 more weeks to go, 2 more tournaments coming up. We'll be looking ahead to the Players' Championship finals this weekend. The announcement from the PDC this week about the World Championship. We've got 3 guests coming up as well, but we've got to start with a tournament that's just finished, the Grand Slam of Darts. A new major winner, the PDC, just keeps on giving in 2020. Jose de Sousa is the Grand Slam champion, the newest major winner, the first to come from Portugal. Are we now looking at one of the sport's next big stars?
So if we go back to our last episode, or our last couple episodes, I think we both said something similar, that all that's missing was a big TV run, and he had never been past the last 16 of a televised event before this past week. But he obviously showed that he was good enough. His performances in defeat in the televised events this year had been top-notch, and he was a bit unfortunate that he still hadn't yet advanced to a quarterfinal or further because he was playing well. He was just running into people who played even better on the night or on the day. But he had done it on the floor. He won 2 titles last year, and he showed just a couple months ago that he could do it on the stage, winning his first European Tour title in a weekend that he was probably the best player in the event, so deserved to win it. So this had been coming. He finally got past that last 16 stage, and he did have to withstand some pressure over the last few matches, but he was the best player for the week. He was the best player. And it's tough to say that someone who's just won a major as the best player isn't one of the sport's next big stars. And I don't feel comfortable saying that he's not, because I think everything he's shown us is that he is. The one thing going against him, of course, is his age. He's already in his mid-40s when he's breaking through, but he's not the first player to break through at an older age. Glen Durrant's been around for a while now, but he really started reaching the upper echelons of the games when he was already like 43, 44 in the BDO. Jose de Sousa is only a couple years older than that and now has won a ranking major with far less experience than Glen Durrant had when he entered the PDC. I think he is one of the sport's next stars, and deservingly so. It was just a brilliant week from him to cap off what has been a brilliant, really 2 years since coming over and giving it a full-time go. So yeah, I think the answer is yes, and very possibly going to be seeing him in the Premier League next year.
It was a well-deserved win, and when we spoke about Jose's European Tour title, that was myself and our producer Hannah that were on the show that week, and we were talking about could this be the start of something big for him, and beats the world number 1 in that final with 105 average. That is going to get noticed, isn't it? And he was just missing that big run on TV. I said on the show I thought it was going to come at the European Championship. He went in as one of the big seeds because of that win that he had on the European Tour. Got the 9 darter in the first round, lost out in the next round. But we've seen what he's been able to do in this Grand Slam. Okay, the group stage, he had to rely on the result in the final game that he wasn't playing in, the Michael Smith-Christoph Ratajski game, but the game goes in his favour. He gets through. For the rest of the weekend, it was a case of how far can he go? How many of these milestones can he tick off? And in the end, he's ticked off all of them. He's gone all the way. He's lifted the title. First player from Portugal to do it. A new major winner. And what impressed me the most, I've got to say, from the run that he had is even these milestones that he's never done before, getting to a first TV quarterfinal, first TV semi-final, first TV final, and then first title, is that he's had to battle through some tough times on the hockey because he's not had it all plain sailing. A lot of those games were very close. He's won it by the odds 2 or 3 or 4 legs in the final, as it turned out. But there were times when he was up against it, even in the final last night when we're talking against James Wade, 3-0 down, and he was 0 out of 10 on the doubles. And for some players, they might think, wow, okay, maybe this is a step too far on this occasion. But he came back brilliantly. And the other rounds as well, he was missing match darts. These opponents were coming back at him, but he was able to get over the line. And what a way to get over the line in the end, the 158 checkout to beat James 16-12 in the final. It was thoroughly impressive. And you look at the reaction that we've seen online from darts fans, I don't think there's been many people that have begrudged him this victory. A lot of people are pleased for him. He comes across as a great personality, doesn't he? He's plays up to the cameras when he walks off the stage, which is good fun. And yeah, we'll see where this takes him now. But if you'd have said 2 years ago when he lost that World Championship game to Michael Barnard with a sub-90 average, this is going to be a player that's going to win a major title in less than 2 years' time, I don't think many people would have said it, but got his tour card at Q School start of last year, and he's just gone on from there. And yeah, the sky's the limit now from the next two tournaments, all going to go onto his ranking. He's not defending any money until next year, so potentially we could see him as a top 10, top 8 player going into next year.
Yes, indeed. And one of the people, though, that is currently top 8 player was the person he beat in the final, James Wade. And that now makes it 2 major runner-ups in under a month for the machine. But are the signs, do you say, good for him to have another deep run at the Worlds this year?
I think so, but you got to say James Wade will be bitterly disappointed that he's missed out on getting this Eric Bristow trophy, the third time that he's got to the final of the Grand Slam, and he's missed out on all 3 occasions of taking home that big title. And you saw it as well on the stage and in his interview afterwards. And I know he's got a bit of stick online for it. The reaction that he had in his interviews, he looked very disappointed, but he had every right to be. If you're losing major finals for a player that's achieved what he has in the game, he's got every right to be disappointed. But yeah, it has been another good week for him, getting to the final, and some brilliant battles that we saw him come through in the knockout stages. The game against Damon Heta, 16-13. The semi-final against Dimitri van der Bergh, coming back to win that one in a last leg decider. Typical James Wade in that final leg, coming through that one. The signs, I think, are good, and it's been a few years since he's had a good run at the World Championship. Go back from 2008 to 2017, 8 of those 10 years, he got to the quarter-final minimum. There's a few semi-finals in there, but the last 3 years he's gone out, I think, last 64, last 16, last 32. So for a player of his calibre and the form that he's shown over the last 4 or 5 weeks, maybe he's due a good run at Alexandra Palace. And okay, the seedings could change. We don't know what the draw's going to be for the first round, who he could go up against. But in terms of the seeds, it looks like he's going to miss out on a few of the bigger names lower down in the rankings through those early rounds. And if the draw's kind, I think we could see him get to a quarter-final. And then it's all about whether he can go further than that semi-final, final, when he's going to come up against some players that are going to be in top form coming through those rounds already. So I think we are due a good run from him at the World Championship. Not going to say he's going to go all the way and win the title, because that's something that he's never done before, but I think he'll go into it with plenty of confidence, despite not adding that 10th TV title to his ranks over the last few weeks.
I can't disagree. He's looking as good, or nearly as good as ever. And that said, you could have said the same thing a couple of years ago when he won televised titles back-to-back weeks in the European Championship and the World Series of Darts final. And he didn't necessarily back it up at the Worlds. I mean, he did make the last 16 that year, but he didn't seem like he was playing at that same level as he had been a couple months earlier. So the question here becomes, can he sustain it? Can he take what he has shown over the last month and bring it to Ali Pali like he used to every year? And we won't know until he gets there, but you mentioned it looks like most likely he's going to have a more favorable draw, at least up until the last 16 stage. He's probably going to avoid Devin Peterson, although Peterson could still climb up the rankings, currently avoiding Danny Noppert, who is a very tricky opponent. So when he gets that first seed, things might be a little bit more favorable than it could be, assuming he gets, though, through that first match. And we don't know. We don't know who he'll be playing either from the Pro Tour or the international qualifiers. And there's some very tricky potential second-round matchups there. Jeff Smith, Damon Heta, Kim Huybrechts, who's been playing well recently. So, we won't know until the draw comes out. But I think it's shaping up to be a good opportunity for Wade to go deep in Worlds for the first time in quite some time. But yeah, like you, I'm not yet ready to tip him to make his first World Championship final or to win his first world title. I mean, he'll have to go through, most likely, Peter Wright and Geraint Price just on the way to the final alone, among a bunch of other top-quality players. And Peter Wright and Geraint Price, despite not having as good a week as James Wade, have definitely had a much better year so far and would be, rightfully so, the favorite against Wade if they were to play at Worlds. But it is as good of an opportunity as he's had in some time to have a deep run. And who knows, maybe this will be his year.
More Grand Slam chat coming up, but first let's get to our first guest on this week's show, and it is with the man who manages both Jose de Sousa and James Wade. Here's our chat with Mac Elkin.
I'm joined today by the manager of three of the most recent first-time major winners, Mac Elkin. Mac, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, Burton. Thank you, mate.
And thank you for joining us. We last had you on about a year ago at the start of the PDC World Championship, and what 11 to 12 months it's been for you and your players.
It's been absolutely insane, mate. Honestly, since lockdown finished, as you know, I've been on the crest of a wave, and I just feel like I'm on a surfboard. I don't want to get off, and I want to ride this crest of a wave. I just want it to keep going and going and going. It's an absolutely amazing buzz that I'm having, watching the boys do so well. And especially like Dimitri winning his first major. We all knew he was going to be good. He won 2 World Youth titles, but we didn't expect it to come so quick. Glen made the transition over from the BDO to the PDC. A lot of pressure on his shoulders, but he's got big shoulders. He managed to pull off the Premier League. He won the Premier League, which in itself was a fantastic achievement. But then to go on and actually win the whole thing was incredible. And then, of course, Jose last night. There's not much I can say about the man. We call him the special one, and he says himself he's the special one because he does crazy things. We just don't know what to expect. But that's what makes him so exciting and so box office. And when I first seen him, I fell in love with him straight away as a dart player. And he's grown in stature, but as a person as well, he just fitted perfectly in with the lads. But I must take a mention to James Wade as well, who's in the last 2 major finals, the European and the Grand Slam last night, and got beaten both, unfortunately. But, oh man, he's coming back as well. And it looks like Wade is actually enjoying himself again. He's laughing with us, he's joking, he's involved all the time. And yes, he was disappointed last night, and maybe on TV didn't come across very good. But that's Wadey, and if he wasn't disappointed, I'd be disappointed in him. Because at the end of the day, he's just lost another major. So great for getting there, but Wadey's been there, done it, so he's got probably a bit more expectation on his shoulders in his own mind. But I'm proud of all the boys, Burton. I'm very proud. And like I say, this crest of a wave, I don't want it to finish.
Well, I don't blame you, and we'll get through a lot of those players, but we do have to start with Jose. As you mentioned, just last night he won the Grand Slam. Can you talk us about the journey that he's been on since he signed with you to now being a major winner, as well as how he came about to signing with you?
Yes, of course. It all started in, I think it was May last year in Copenhagen in Denmark. And what happened, I've been watching Jose like when he first got a tour card, and he was always a loner, always sitting alone. Sometimes his wife came with him, but he practiced alone. And that's probably what made him stand out, to be fair, that he was always alone. And I just felt a bit for him. So in Copenhagen, he had a little run. And I just said to him the one day, I said, listen, if you want to join us, come downstairs, we'll have some food. You and your wife join us. Well, they couldn't really speak very good English. It was quite funny, to be fair. And straight away, Jose, he's an infectious man. As soon as you meet him, you like him. He's just a funny man. Like I say, he's infectious. So we had a bit of food together. We had a chat, and I said, listen, I'd like to offer you a contract. Thinking because he was alone, thinking he'd like jump at the chance. But he said to me, Mac, Mr. Mac, he said, I really appreciate that you've offered me a contract. I've had a lot of offers off a lot of different managers. But what I would like to do, if it's okay with you, is have a think about it and then come back to you. He said, I'm paid up until August. He said, but I'd like to have a think about it and come back to you. So I said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I offered him the contract. And then he went, well, a few of the other managers have offered me a better contract or a better percentage. So I said, it was up to me, obviously, to sell myself. So I just went, listen, I'm going to blow my own trumpet with me. I said, like, you'll get the full package. Basically, the moment you get on an aeroplane, is I take over. As soon as you land, I'm there, or the driver's there. You'll be picked up, you'll be taken to the hotel, you'll be looked after, everything sorted. All you've got to do is play darts. I said, but listen, don't take my word. Speak to a few of the boys. So he started speaking to Dimitri and built up a friendship with Dimitri. And obviously Glen was talking to him, and even a few of the outsiders like Chris Dobie spoke to him, and which I appreciate. Anyway, a couple of months passed. He came up to me and in the July, and he just walked up to me and he went, "Can you take me back to?" He just lost the game. He said, "Can you take me back to the hotel, please?" I just looked and I laughed. I went, "Jose, listen, you're not my player yet." Taking the mickey. I said, "I've still got to watch the boys." And he went, "Oh, I want to speak to you." Well, as it happens, I had about a half-hour window, so I took him back to the hotel. As soon as he got into the van, he just went, "I want to sign with you. I've watched what you do. I speak to players, and everyone says you're the best." And that was it. That's how it came about. I think within a day, I'd got him a contract, put it in front of him. He read it, he signed it, and that was it. It's been a dream since. He's absolutely fantastic to work with. He fits in with the team. All the lads absolutely adored him. And I mean, to be honest, we joke about it. They call him the favourite, and they always go, "Oh, where's the favourite?" Glen gets a bit jealous. I've got a cup in my house with Jose's face on, which we've got a group chat, and I always post a picture of me drinking a coffee out of the Jose cup, and I get some stick for that. But yeah, he's fantastic. He fits in. He's brilliant, and he's absolutely loved by one and all.
And now he is a major champion, and obviously a huge week for you with 3 of the 4 semifinalists in Coventry. And I guess, one of them, of course, also recently joined, James Wade, joining you just over the summer. How has he been since joining your stable, and how did that all come about as well?
Well, it all come about. I'll start there. I've been very close friends with James for a fair few years, and he's always said he wouldn't ask me to manage him because he's hard work and he'd hate to fall out with me and so on and so on. And then his old manager decided to take time out, so he became a free agent, and we started talking during lockdown, and we decided to give it a go. So I offered him a contract, and again, it was pretty. It was done pretty quick. There was no negotiation. I went to his house, stayed there probably for about 4 or 5 hours, and we was just talking. We was having a laugh, bit of food, drink in the garden, and then he said, "I suppose we would talk about a contract." And when I said to him, "This is the part I've been dreading." I said, "Because I know what's going to happen." So I told him what I want, and he went, "Okay." He said, "If you deliver, I'm happy to pay that," which was a surprise. No negotiation, nothing. We shook hands, and that was the deal done. So since he's joined us, Wade is fitted in. Obviously, James does his own thing. He's another one, very much a loner. But honestly, since he's joined us, he's really got on with all the boys. We have a laugh. He's really come out of his shell. And even last night, he was disappointed. I know on TV maybe didn't come across very well because he was disappointed. But if he wasn't disappointed, then I would have been disappointed in him. So, I'll never ever put a player down for being disappointed for losing a game, because they never do it on purpose. They get some terrible stick on social media if they lose, of some people who probably lost 50 pence on a bet or something. And it's really uncalled for and really unfair on the players, because trust me, they feel it. I mean, not one of my players, but let's use Michael Smith. Some of the stuff that's been said about him in the last couple of months is disgraceful. And I respect him so much for coming back and playing so well, especially in this tournament. I thought he was going to win it. For me, he was the best all the way. And then he just lost it against Jose. But Wade has been fantastic. The last 2 TV finals he's made, the European and obviously the Grand Slam. I don't think he's far away from winning a major. He may lose a little bit of concentration during games, but when he's on, it's oh my life. I mean, I'm sitting here with Dimitri van Bergh, and Dimitri will tell you, even when Dimitri went 15-14 up, he said you'd always expecting Wadey to do something, because he doesn't look like he's playing well, but he's always hanging on to the coattail, and then all of a sudden he can pull things out of the bag. And we all know Wadey, along with Glen Durrant, is probably the best finishers in the PDC. They're fantastic, mate.
I'm glad to know I have two things in common with Wade. I'm left-handed, and I often don't look like I'm playing well. Difference being, sometimes Wade looks like he's playing well.
And you're both miserable.
Yes, indeed. Now, you mentioned something that wasn't planning on touching on, but I think it's an interesting point. You mentioned the abuse that all players get from quote-unquote fans. What do you think there's anything that the PDC or Darts could or should do to prevent that, or to try to stop that from happening?
Okay. Well, I've had this conversation with my players, and that's all I can do. The PDC have done all they can. There's not much you can do, the same as any sport. If a player wants to go on social media, he's putting himself out there for abuse. And unfortunately, in the world we live in, it's a very minority of people that do it. I don't know. They get something out of it. They go fishing, and they just love to take the local players to take the bait. But they don't realise that it doesn't just affect the player. The players maybe have a wife, he's got a family, he might have children that read it. I mean, going back to, I can only speak about my own players. Somebody put something up about Glen once, and Glen was more upset the fact that his daughter would have read that on social media rather than himself. So he don't care. People can say what they like about him, but his family read the things, and he knows it will upset his family. So these people, he goes deeper than just the player. So yeah, they might want to hurt the player because they've lost a bet or because they're angry because of something. But they have to understand it goes deeper than that. But the PDC can't do much more. They tell players, listen, don't go on social media after a game. Don't do this, don't do that. The PDPA have got the mental awareness thing going at the moment, and they try to do things, but there's not much anyone can do. It's just the individual out there who are the saddened, the sorry individuals who like to hurt other people, probably because their lives aren't very good themselves. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, for me, it's bullying. It's bullying over it's bullying over social media. The people are hiding behind keyboards and what have you, and they just want to hurt people for the sake of it. It's sad, but it's a fact, and it's a way of life we're living at the moment, unfortunately. And back in the day when I was a kid, we didn't have telephones, we didn't have none of that. So if somebody said that's something to say, they have to say it to your face. But nowadays, it's with all the technology that's out there, so much can go on, and people can create so many fake IDs and so on and so on, and say what they like about you. It is sad. And I've seen players like I say, Mike Smith. I mean, it really, really upset his family, and it's not fair. It's not fair on his wife. I mean, his children, luckily, are probably a bit too young to realise, but it really isn't fair on Mike or his wife, because trust me, Mike Smith would never, ever, ever throw a game like somebody once accused him. And I'll give you the prime example. When he played Christoph Ratajski in the Grand Slam, he knew if he lost, Christoph's through, Jose's out. But he was the ultimate professional. He went out and he played his game, and he hit 105 average. He was immense. That's Mike Smith for you. Yeah, he gets abuse more than probably anybody.
I wish there was something they could do, but as you said, there's not much the PDC can do. Now, back more positive, you mentioned riding a crest of the wave, and we could probably spend an hour going through everything that's happened this year. But let's look to 2021. A couple of your players we haven't seen much this year, Kyle Anderson and Corey Cadby, and we heard Corey's thinking about making a comeback. Kyle's been with his family through the pandemic. What do you see either of them going back to the PDC next year?
To be honest, with what's going on again with the UK going into lockdown, we don't know what's going on until the 2nd of December. I know there's rumours going around, but we can't make plans for anybody. And obviously with Kyle, we don't know what's going on with Australia. He's got a lot of medical problems at the moment that he's trying to sort out. He has signed a new deal with Shot, had a new branch of Darts out, and he's got new equipment. He's really excited to get back on the scene. I think, well, we're going to have to see something of Kyle next year, because if we don't, he'll lose his tour card. But I think Kyle will play quite a lot on the DPA, and then pick and choose a few of the Players' Championships that he'll come over for. You never know. If the Players' Championships are like this year and they do them in bunches, it's going to be great for the players, because it's so much easier when you've got 5 or 6 in a row to play. And the players that travel from afar, it saves a lot of money for them. So all I can say is about Kyle, I'm pretty sure we'll see him again next year. Corey, I can't say until we know what's going on with this pandemic. The plans are he'll go to Q School in January. Fingers crossed that still goes ahead. But because he's in Australia and with what's going on, I can't put anything down in writing at the moment, mate.
As I said, so much that we could go through. I want to talk a little bit about a player that I don't think we've ever asked you about, and I don't think we've had him on the show, but Kevin Dotes winning a Development Tour and Challenge Tour title in recent months. How excited are you about his potential?
Got a lad next to me, like I said, Dimitri van den Bergh, who's now sitting there with a very smug smile on his face. He sat there and he said to me, he went, boss, there's a young lad in Holland, but he's from Holland but lives in Sweden. He said, called Kevin Dotes. He said, like, I said, I've been watching him, and we sat in Belgium in, I can't think of the place we was in now. Hasselt. We sat in Hasselt in Belgium, and we was watching it on the phone on Darts Connect. And I think he got to the semi-final that day, but he was beating everybody. And like, he said, boss, you've got to sign him. He's a talent. And so, like, I spoke to him and I said, like, Kevin, I said, I'm interested in signing you. He went, wow, the Sportsman Management Company want me. Wow, this is incredible. And I'm like, well, this is going to be easy kind of thing in my mind. But, you know, I met him in Minehead at the UK Open. And what a pleasant, lovely kid. And he reminded me of Dimitri when I met Dimitri. He was nice. He was level-headed. He was polite, respectful. So we cracked the deal. We done the deal. And then lockdown happens. So I didn't get to see anything of him. So started doing there was a lot of online darts, and a lad called Ben Hunter in Australia used to do live darts, and it was all screen darts. So I got involved with him, and I was doing all the matchups every week. I was doing 3 a week on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I started putting Kevin on a Wednesday and Thursday challenge match, so people could challenge him. Not picking his opponent. People are challenging him, so he's getting decent players. And he was beating them all. And yes, I know it's online. I know it's in your backyard. I know it's in your house. Totally different to the pressure. But he was impressively beating them. He wasn't just beating them. He was impressive. And he knew I was watching, so there was a little bit of pressure. So anyway, the youth come back up, the first tournament. So I picked him up at the airport. He loved it. He loved the fact that I picked him up. The minibus was there picking other people up. I picked him up personally, just me and him. We drove to Barnsley together, dropped him off, and then he went on and he won the youth. The first thing he did, I was at a tournament. I can't remember where I was, and he phoned me straight up. He's on the phone on FaceTime. He's like, "Oh, Mac, can't believe it. I've won a tournament. I'm so happy. I've rewarded you," and that's all he was concerned about, the fact that he'd rewarded me. So then obviously the challenge tour comes on. He's never played the challenge tour before. So my advice was go, enjoy it. It's probably, I wouldn't say a better standard, because these kids are fantastic. I said, but there's a lot more players. You're playing a lot more experienced players. And like I say, he went on and he won that as well, won one of them. It was great. And then he got into the Winter Series because he's done so well. He finished 9th in the overall order of merit on the Challenge Tour and only played the one weekend. Brilliant. So he got into the Winter Series that's just gone. And his first day, he won his first game with a 99 average, I think he was. 6-1 against Martin Atkins. Top beat second game. And then the next day, he won his first game, I think, against Wayne Jones. And he had it was a 94 average. And only once that week, that whole week, the 5 days of the Winter Series, did he average below 90. Now that is, it's exciting on its own. The guy is going to be a star. Like I said, he's level-headed. He wanted it. I mean, he turned up to the Winter Series. He had one dart shirt. He's got no dart shirts. He's got no. He had no supplier. He's got no. A couple of sponsors like the local and everything. But do you know? So it was all new to him and everything. And he looked around and he looked at all these players and he's sitting with Michael van Gerwen and all the Dutch are there. And he's just not in awe of any of it. He just belongs there. And I'm really excited here. I've got high hopes of Kevin. Really high hopes. And also, while we're on the subject, Owen Roloffs, another kid, 17 years old, already had 2 9-darters this year. And another one's playing great. Got to the semi-final of a youth tournament. He's only 17 and he's playing fantastic. So, yeah, the future for me with Ted, Owen and Kevin, and also Dom Taylor, who's part of Will Adamson, who's obviously my sister company, and Brian Rahman, 2 young players that are coming along for him that are also part of it. So the future's really exciting. So I've not got a lot to worry about at the moment.
Yes, indeed. Well, Mac, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck to your team this weekend in the Players' Championship.
Burton, it's always a pleasure talking to you, mate.
Thanks again to Mac for joining us. Now, something to be said for this Grand Slam that we've just seen being perhaps the best tournament of 2020. Do you agree with that?
I think you have to. I mean, just looking at the quarterfinal alone might have been better than any tournament in terms of just those 4 matches alone were better than any 4 you can pick from any tournament this year. And there were a bunch of other fantastic matches across the week. The quarterfinal day, though, in my opinion, was the greatest day of darts ever in terms of the quality. All matches going within 2 legs of the maximum and 2 of them going all the way to 16-15. And there wasn't a bad match between them. You know, the lowest quality match was probably the most interesting. Dimitri van den Bergh and Nathan Aspinall. It's the lowest quality match. Nathan Aspinall in defeat still averaged almost 95. Dimitri van den Bergh averaged almost 98. And that was the lowest quality match. I think that sums up the quarterfinals, but it didn't dip from there. The semifinals was 2 very good matches. Simon Whitlock throwing everything at Jose de Sousa, not just the kitchen sink, but he also went next door and stole their kitchen sink and threw it at Jose as well. In the end, Jose just absolutely trounced him over the last 10 or 12 legs. Whitlock was averaging 115 around the first break, and Jose stuck with him and then just powered home from there. And then, of course, the final, another high-quality match. But there were very few matches for the week that weren't. There were a couple in the group stage, but they were counteracted by the brilliance of Dimitri van den Bergh in the group stage with one of the highest averages ever across the 3 matches, including the highest average ever in a single match in the Grand Slam in his match against Ricky Evans. And then you had even matches like Gurren Price against Mikuru Suzuki, which, okay, the averages weren't there, but what a match that was. And Gurren Price, he could have been going home if he lost that match, and a couple other things went a different way. And he was fortunate not to lose that match, with Mikuru missing 4 match starts. It was just such a brilliant tournament, start to finish. Yes, there were some low lights, especially the BDO's performance in what will be its last time there, but it doesn't detract or in any way subtract from what was just the best tournament of the year and one of the best tournaments ever.
I'm in full agreement there, and we put our question of the week out on Monday, so the tournament's still going on, so we couldn't yet describe it as the best of 2020, but just following on from the conversation that we had over the weekend, you said that the best day of darts ever, when we put that out as our question of the week, was the Sunday, the quarterfinal day, the best session of darts ever, and poll still going on Twitter, but 68% going with yes, 32% going with no, and me personally, I think based on a full day, 2 sessions of darts, it is the best for me. 2017 UK Open quarterfinals, that was an unbelievable session. The semi-finals and final didn't quite live up to it, but as I say, as far as a 2-session day of darts, it's hard to beat that one. But yeah, I think it is the best so far of 2020 as far as a tournament is going into the Grand Slam. My tournament of the year was the World Match Play, because we spoke about it on the show after. Just so much happening day after day. There was drama, there was shocks, there was great games. I said on the show at the time that tuned in each night and there was a story, there was something to come out of it. Yeah, that was worth watching. And case with the Grand Slam as well. And okay, it was different this year with the no fans not being in Wolverhampton, but look at some of them games that we watched that we were treated to, and we completely forgot that there was no one in attendance. There was so many good games, and credit to the players as well that were able to put that entertainment on for us. And yeah, those quarterfinals, brilliant games there. Semi-finals, final itself even was a good battle as well. Did our show last week just after the group stage, so we were 4 days at the halfway point of the tournament, if you like, and there were so many good highlights to pick out already, and it just carried on in the last 16 forwards. So yeah, for me, best tournament of the year. We've got 2 more coming up this weekend. Players Championship finals. I think that's going to be very difficult for that to overhaul it, given that we don't get as many long format games as we did this one. And it's all to the World Championship. Can that match what we've seen Grand Slam? It's going to take a lot of stopping for sure.
Now, we don't yet have really any idea what the Grand Slam is going to look like next year, with the BDO being no more. We expect that it will be, at the very least, a little bit different, but at this point, it's just guesswork. But do you think it's time for the PDC to open spots up to other organizations, or should it become a PDC-only event? I've
seen a few different opinions on this, and I mentioned at the end of our last show last week that I had an article going out on the website. I'd spoken to Little Richard Ashdown from the WDF, Steve Brown from MAD, and JDC to get their thoughts on it, and Richard quite rightly said it's in the hands of the PDC. It's their tournament. They get to make the decision on who gets invited, which organisations they want involved in the tournament. So for them, all they can do really is get their tournaments on, make them as prestigious, as appealing as possible, and hope that the PDC can get them involved, because a big drawing point of this tournament, as we spoke about last week, was the BDO versus PDC, which, as we know, that's not going to happen next year going forward. But could we see other organisations come in? Well, WDF-wise, once they get their tournaments back up and running, fingers crossed next year, they've said that their major events are going to be towards the back end of the year, so December, January time. So when this next Grand Slam comes around, they wouldn't have had a World Masters or a World Championship style event. So you're looking at the rankings from their perspective. MAD as well. I've spoken to Steve Brown and got a press conference lined up in the next few weeks. There's some really interesting plans that they've got coming out, which I can't unfortunately divulge on this show, but it's going to be very different to what we've seen before in darts. So do keep an eye out on that. But there are organisations out there that will want to take them spots. Of course, PDC could do their own way and go with their affiliate tours, go down the Asian tour route, pick some players from that, other tours that they've got around the world, and give their players another incentive to play these tours, to say, if you do well enough, we'll give you an opportunity to play minimum 3 games live TV in our Grand Slam. That is a potential. And got to say as well, okay, we saw the 2 BDO players play, but aside from Makuru pushing going price really close on that opening day, we weren't really talking about those 2 BDO players. We were talking exclusively about PDC players. So perhaps they could look at it and go, we don't really need players from other organisations at this moment in time. We've got enough quality. We've seen from what we've seen this week, we've got enough drama, enough great games, enough quality players in our own ranks to produce a tournament like we've just seen. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what they go down next year.
Yeah, and I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. My preference would be to bring in players from the PDC affiliated tours around the world, and I think this week speaks to exactly why that should be the case. You look, okay, there is no affiliated tour on the Iberian Peninsula, but Jose de Sousa is not a player who has been around for that long. And if there were opportunities, he could have, and if there were affiliated tours that got into this, we might have seen him before. We might have seen other players that we never got the opportunity to see. And this Grand Slam is where that should be. Damon had his first year as a PDC tour card holder, but he's been a top player on the Australian tour for a few years now. He made it all the way to the quarterfinal stage in this event. And the DPA is what helped make him PDC ready. Imagine how much more PDC ready he would have been if he had an opportunity to play it in the Grand Slam before coming over to Worlds. I think this event should be opened up to players from the other PDC affiliated tours, including the Asian tour, the Australian tour, the CDC, which I don't know if it's technically PDC affiliated, but PDC does sponsor it, the Nordic and Baltic Tour. I think that's where those 8 spots should go that used to go to the PDO. Maybe 1 spot for the Women's World Champion and the WDF World Champion or whatever ends up taking over the BDO's role. But most of the non-PDC spots should be for the PDC affiliated tours. That would make this event, that will allow this event to keep its unique factor, but also help spread the game.
Now we'll move on to our next guest on this week's show, and it is with the head of marketing for Nodor International, which looks after the Winmau and Red Dragon brands, Simon Hall. I'm delighted to say we're joined once again by the head of marketing for Nodor International, Simon Hall. Thanks very much for the time, Simon. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, and appreciate you asking me to come on.
Now, we last had you on the show, as we were touching on off air, with my co-host Burton back in January, and you discussed then the signing of Michael van Gerwen, the world number 1, to Winmau. What was the reaction like to that big announcement?
It was absolutely phenomenal internally, and then the panic set in of obviously when we were going to announce him and do the launch, because we were faced with such a limited date that it had to be January the 2nd, and you're faced with, is he going to be a world champion, or is he going to be potentially a grumpy loser or whatever? But it just turned out he got to the final, and we had the launch at the Millennium Stadium on the 2nd of January, and Michael was mind-blowingly phenomenal on the night. Just the guy just lost the world final, probably not happy with the way he played, and yet he came and just wowed the crowd we had there. And it was the actual event itself reached over 5 million people, so it created a huge splash and sort of complete rebranding of Michael within the industry, because we believed he could be represented in a different way, in a far more sort of prestige way, if you like, and that's the path we wanted to go down. So yeah, the response has been phenomenal, I have to say.
Just before the first lockdown that we've had, we saw Michael go on and win the UK Open, some stunning performances, especially on that final day in Minehead, and I believe using the authentic darts as well. And not long after that, we had the 4-month break. But how were things going into what would be that long break, where you guys must have been happy with how things were progressing early on?
Yeah, very happy. I mean, Michael has been here to Winmau on several occasions, and and a part of the whole structure of him making such a big change was to come away from his old darts, if you like, and find a new set of darts and some excitement in that. And we started on that journey probably almost immediately. So Michael's really, he's such a strong character, but he's actually got tremendous knowledge, not only in and around manufacturing in the sport, but really what he needs. And so we thought we'd narrowed down some good models. So yeah, things early were going exceptionally well, but you can never be sure whenever you fit a player. I mean, if you look at someone like Peter Wright, you can fit him 1 week, next week he wins something, and next week he changes his mind. So it's very, you're on a knife edge when things are changing.
Before we move on to other players, for just sticking with one more with Michael, of course, we've not seen him win a TV title, the bigger title, since that UK Open. There's lots of theories going around about the lack of crowds, other players obviously getting better, his loss of confidence, his darts. How closely have Winmau, yourself and everyone worked with him to try and get that equipment right and try and get him back to the standard that he was at before?
For us, I think there's a few ways we've looked at it, and the first one being, if you look at other people who've dominated sports for certain periods of time and left legacies, in darts, I guess Taylor was one of them. There has to become potentially an end to that dominance as you've changed the face of the sport. So I think there's an element of that to Michael. The crowd, you rightly say, and COVID has completely been a seismic shift in the awakening of certain talents, as we've seen with the likes of Sousa, and then the effect of people who are used to those crowds. So that's a major effect. Then you've got your equipment change coming in, being comfortable under pressure in new environments. So we measure them. It's not that we measure them like you would measure the weight of the dart or the length. you measure and gauge it on how Michael feels and what he wants to do, what's best for him. And so we're very close to how Michael is feeling on that. We may, we have to push him at times and say, you potentially have to go through a pain barrier, but it's all about the right timing on that. Working with Michael, I've got to say, he's such a great ambassador and such a pleasure to work with. He will listen to other angles, but ultimately comes down to what's best for him, and we make that choice together.
Now, speaking of the lockdown and the pandemic, when the first lockdown came in March, we saw a huge boom in online darts, people playing at home. Did you guys notice a spike in interest from a sales point of view as well? How did you try and utilise that?
Massive increase in and around the darts space for people wanting something to do at home or wanting to re-engage playing darts or to update their current equipment, because friends of mine personally were coming to me because they knew I worked for darts, said, oh, what's the best thing to buy, where shall I get it, oh, Argos haven't got any, Amazon are running out, So I think the old expression that the rising tide floats all boats is pretty much right for the whole darts industry. It then became a battle of who's got stock effectively. So it's been a really, whilst you would normally say sales injections are great, if your forecast and planning is based on figures that are a lot lower, it puts a massive amount of internal pressure into the business, because you've got the same amount of people trying to produce higher quantities than you've actually geared up for. And when you take slack out of the business and when you haven't got some breathing space, it creates a lot of pressure internally. So whilst it's been, I think all of the darts manufacturers are probably the same. So whilst it seems rosy, but as an overall market external position, I think what's exciting, and we really, really hope for all of us in darts, that people who maybe have tried it for the first time, taken it back up, or been more serious, then actually the dart playing market stays bigger.
Definitely. Well, looking at more recent events, we know you're a proud Welshman, and so what was it like seeing Gerwin Price and Johnny Clayton, two players under the Red Dragon umbrella, bring home that title for Wales in the PDC World Cup early this month?
Oh, that was brilliant. I mean, for us personally, we in that tournament we throw off all of our allegiances and our objectivity, and that goes down to your nation. The Welsh are proud about their rugby and football, and we are a small nation who, it's hard for us to achieve what we can in sports. When Geddy and Johnny went and lifted that World Cup, it was amazing. All my family, my kids, my wife, everyone, all the family were engaged in watching that. It had a similar effect as when Fallon was playing up on stage in the Worlds. It brought people in from outside the sport to watch the occasion. So absolutely fantastic. And poor old Mark Webster, he's getting daily abuse off Johnny with pictures of his winner's medal.
Brilliant. Well, as I say, it's been a busy November as well. Winmau announcing the new signing of Joe Cullen, coming over after a long time with his previous guys. He was with Unicorn. When did you hear that Joe was going to become available, and how excited are you to work with him now?
Well, Joe's somebody that, I'll be really, really honest at the outset, I'm quite, because of the work we do on a technical side, so we do a lot of work with the side-ride coach, Steve Feeney. He's predominantly with snooker, but he's a high-level accuracy and performance coach. So his knowledge around dealing under pressure technically, I'd always kind of looked at Joe and thought, he's so flamboyant and capable of such highs and lows. I thought, when his name came up, I thought, as a player, what stuck with me was one of the best games I've ever seen on telly when he played Corey Cadby in the Worlds. I think it was the first round or prelim, but it was an unbelievable game of darts. And I look back and I thought, this kid's really got something. But to me, there was always a potential that technically there was something not quite right. So really excited. And Joe, long story short, I had a look at figures and it wasn't. It was quite clear that Joe only needed a small step to actually get to the next level. And when you actually, it's quite an interesting point, when you actually see someone throw on telly to in real life, there's a massive difference. And so we met Joe, had a look, and I just was, really excited. So, and it was probably I think it was probably back end of last year. He sort of, we were aware he was potentially available, and he's a real good fit for us. Really good fit. He's a great guy as well.
Good to hear. Well, we mentioned earlier we had you on at the start of the year, and of course that was the time that Peter Wright was the newly crowned PDC World Champion. He's been with Red Dragon, as you was explaining to Burton, for a long time. We thought he might have settled on a set of darts, but he continues to tinker with his setup, and we saw with the Grand Slam this past week switching sets mid-game as well too. I know it's good exposure for you guys seeing the different sets on TV, I'm sure, but what was it like watching one of your players do that?
It's great, if I'm honest, because he has got the confidence to be so in tune with his own game, and it's not that we don't care, we just care what's best for him to win that game. There was the one time he took the stage with an old set of darts with glued in points and they fell out. We had a quiet exchange of words, and it was just like, Pete, you've got to represent yourself professionally and us if you can. We see Peter's ability is so intuitively different to other players that to me it's like I wouldn't hit a 100-yard golf shot with a driver, and Peter's very similar in darts. If he's under conditions that he feels are different, he will talk about temperature, air quality, even wind up on stage, so he really understands that at times he needs different darts to do a different job for him. There are, like, if you look at Whitlock, Simon, he would take 3 years to change a dart and then keep going back to his old set. So someone like Peter, he feels the game, and it's just like it's a different club to do a different shot for us, and it's great. I mean, I think it's exciting. I think there's lots of work to be done in darts to say that maybe some darts are better for finishing than they are scoring, and I think Peter's pushing those boundaries, and great, really good for us.
And it was around this time last year, the now famous text from Peter to Lee, one of your colleagues at Red Dragon, saying that you've made me a set to win the World Championship. And we had Wayne Warren on the show quite recently as well, and he was telling us a similar conversation with Red Dragon, got him a new setup, and he went on to win the BDO World Championship. Is this generally the busiest time of year for you guys with players, a few weeks leading up to the World Championships, for players wanting any last-minute changes before the biggest tournament of the year?
Yes, it can be, but quite often the motivation of a player change is what you want to be looking at. So is someone changing because they're trying to find some new form? Are they changing because they're in good form but they want to go to the next level? Are they panicking? So there's lots of different reasons players would look to change a set of darts this early. In a sport like darts, you'd argue probably the coaching would be along the lines of, we'd hope you know what you want to play with by now. But again, Peter's very different. Wayne was slightly different, that he kind of had something in his mind that he thought could help him, although you're still playing well. So there's always subtle differences, but sometimes you get the ones where you just got to chat to them and you actually uncover that they're just starting to get on edge, about excited, bit of anxiety, bit of, am I ready? And that's it's an exciting time. It's fun, and it sometimes is not busy at all. What you want ideally is your players saying to you, I'm playing great, I'm set, ready to go.
Definitely. Well, it's an exciting time coming up. The World Championship, the announcement this week is going to be coming in a few weeks' time now. And for you guys as well at Winmau, you've got the big launch coming up a week on Friday, 4th of December. I know there's a Red Dragon one coming up not too far away as well. But just touching on the Winmau one, really, what can we expect to see when that launch comes around next week?
Well, the launch has been we're last into the market for new launches, and that's simply because of the times we've been in. Our supply chain, albeit, is exceptionally different to all other darts companies because we're vertically integrated from raw material right the way through to delivery. So we've seen, in just satisfying demand, new product development has been slower than we'd like it, if I'm honest, because of just a massive amount of demand. So we're a bit late into the market, but the launch itself is comprehensive. There's around 14 ranges of darts coming out, loads of new flights, there's some new shafts, there's a couple of accessories in there, new surround, and it's a comprehensive launch, considering the circumstances in which we've designed and developed it. There's a nice couple of ATG darts coming out in there. So yeah, some really nice stuff, and it's what the launches they create such an excitement now and such a huge amount of commentary in the industry. It's great. We engage with it, and you get some feedback, positive and negative, and it's great. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. And Simon, always appreciate your time. Wish all your players involved with Winmau and Red Dragon all the best for the rest of the year, and as with you guys as well, all the best for the launch next week with Winmau.
Really appreciate that, Alex, and thanks for having us on as a guest.
Support for the weekly Dartscast is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code ADONIS at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code ADONIS. Your balls will thank you. Now, if you excuse me.
Thanks again to Simon for joining us. Now we've got to talk about an announcement that dropped on Monday night during the semi-finals of the Grand Slam, and that is that the 2021 PDC World Championship will be at Alexandra Palace. Kicks off December 15th right up to January 3rd next year. But the big question is, do you think we're going to see some fans in attendance or not?
The signs seem to be pointing towards the fact that there will be some crowd. Obviously, if they didn't think there was a realistic chance that there would be a crowd, I don't think they would have decided to go ahead and having it at Alexandra Palace. I think we would have seen it move to Coventry or Milton Keynes like most events have been. So this seems to be an optimistic sign that the PDC believe that there will be some semblance of a crowd, whether that's 500, 1,000, 2,000, we don't yet know. But it is still too early to make any concrete conclusion. Things can change pretty quickly, and right now there's lockdown in England, and that's set to expire in about a week, but we don't know whether things will keep improving. Things could quickly start to escalate again, and either lockdown resumes, or it's not even if lockdown doesn't resume, it's not safe to have a crowd. So I think it's too early to tell, but it seems like the answer is the PDC think that it's a realistic possibility. And, that is a good thing. Whether it's the smart move to have a crowd, even if you could or not, that's a different question. But it's a good thing that it's even a possibility, because it means things are improving. But, well, like we've been saying all year, we're just going to have to take it day by day, week by week.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've been saying it for a lot of 2020, especially since March events. Are they going to go on? Are we going to get fans in? And think back to the summer as well, the World Match Play, PDC left it as late as possible to try and get fans in, and we've gone since March with no fans in attendance here in the UK at least anyway. And when the announcement came out, there was a lot of talk about them saying, could we have fans in? But take nothing away as well from the announcement that this event is going to be at Alexandra Palace, because as you say, they could have easily gone, we're not sure if we're going to get fans, let's put it to a venue that we've been quite often, Coventry, Milton Keynes. But I'm really pleased that they're going to have it at Ali Pali, because especially for the players that are qualified for this World Championship for the first time, the likes of Peter Hedman, who we had on the show a few weeks ago, for her to get the opportunity to play in the PDC World Championship and play it at the venue been accustomed to now for the best part of 10 plus years now, is going to be good for her fans or no fans. But will we get the fans? That is the big question, and we're speaking on, the 25th of November, so less than 3 weeks now before the tournament gets underway. It's going to be touch and go now. There's limited time really to get the fans in, but we know that with Barry Hearn, with the PDC, they are going to give themselves every opportunity, and it's not like they're going to be trying to sell out a full house, full crowd for all 28 sessions. It is going to be a limited crowd, if any, so don't know how many that looks like, maybe 1,000, just a number off the top of my head, but they're going to be selling less tickets than they usually would, and the demand will be huge, because especially for us here in the UK darts fans, the tournament that people love to go to every single year, and people have gone 8-9 months without being able to go to sporting events like this, so they are going to be desperate to go to it, and I'm sure there will be every restriction in place to make sure it is as safe as possible, but it's out of their hands at the moment. We'll just have to wait and see, as we've been saying quite a lot.
Now, we've got a chat lined up with Barry Hearn this Friday, and he'll hopefully shed a little bit more light on how many spots will be or they expect to be available at the PDPA qualifier on Monday. But any thoughts on who might come through that event?
Yeah, that is going to be a very interesting day of darts coming up this Monday. So less than a week to go. We don't know how many spots are going to be in it. I've spoken to a player that he's going to be playing in that qualifier, and he's been told it will be anywhere between 2 and 13. So yeah, any number between that is what we're looking at here. So you could end up playing 2, possibly 3 games to get to Ali Pali, and that's probably a discussion for another day. Is if we do end up with that top number of 13, there'll be people saying, well, maybe they should have put more spots Pro Tour or other lists rather than just the one-day qualifier. But I guess with a lot of the things this year, the PDC, we are in difficult circumstances, and they do have to make a decision, and putting everyone in that qualifier on the final day looks like it's the way they're going to go. But as far as players, there's going to be a lot of quality there. But I think the highest ranked player at the moment that's missing out, Darren Webster's 4th current order of merit. He's of course just got the call up the Players Championship finals this weekend. Unfortunately, Mensa Suljovic having to withdraw, but could be a good opportunity for Darren to get a bit of confidence again, get some wins on TV, or if he's on to stage 2, I haven't checked yet, but get some wins on TV, get a good run together. And good thing as well is this Players Championship finals is in Coventry. It's not in Minehead, and the qualifier in Coventry as well. So players that do have a deep run this weekend, they're only travelling, they are going to be at the same venue for the qualifiers. That does help. So yeah, give a mention to Darren Webster. 2 other players though that we've spoken about on this show recently, quite a lot this year as well, that haven't maybe done as well as we thought they would have, given the performance they've put in. Justin Pipe, Jelle Klaassen, could this be their time to really make their mark, get into the World Championship again? I think they're going to be 2 players to keep an eye out for. Benito van der Pas got through it last year. He's a player that's had to go through this qualifier for the last few years to try and get into Ali Pali. He's seen him drop down a little bit, but he's more than capable. And yeah, there's a lot of players in there I think that will fancy their chances, whether it's 2, 13, 5, 6 spots, we don't know, but they'll all fancy getting through that qualifier and getting to Ali Pali.
Yeah, and you're right, Darren Webster is the highest ranked player, not here, but not currently in the World Championship field. But another thing to remember is there's always the possibility that some players will pull out of Worlds this year or have a positive COVID test, unfortunately. So it's a very bizarre place that we're in right now, and we just are going to be guessing who ends up being in the field. But you mentioned Justin Pipe. He's the 2nd highest ranked player, currently not in the World Championship field, but it's really unfortunate for him that he's not, because he has played at a very high standard for much of this season and just hasn't been getting the results. You've got to fancy him if he has any confidence after what was not the best performance in the Grand Slam, to be one of those players who comes through. But there are a lot of other big names that are going to be going to that qualifier, or at least eligible to go to that qualifier. And as we talked about a few weeks ago, possibly China save their tour cards. People like all-time great Robert Thornton, Richard North, Matthew Edgar, all need to get through to have any chance of keeping their tour card. James Wilson as well, Jan Decker, players who are World Championship regulars, but none of them are going to be coming in with a lot of confidence. It's a tough event to predict. It's a weird event to predict. Every year there's someone who you really just don't expect who ends up getting through it. I'm not going to make a prediction yet because we're still not sure exactly who's going to be there. We don't know how many spots are going to be. As you mentioned, it's anywhere from 2 to 13. And if it's 13, that means it's potentially almost a quarter of the people eligible to participate in it. If it's 2, it's 1/32 of the people eligible to participate in it. Some will not be there, obviously. Kyle Anderson's not going to be there. You wouldn't expect Cristo Reyes to be there, as he skipped most of the events for the last few months, although maybe he will be. I think the majority of the eligible players will be there, but we just don't know how many spots they'll be playing for.
6 picks to finish up the show, but before then, let's hear from our final guest on this week's show. And he's one of the players who's going to be making his debut in the Players' Championship finals this weekend in Borland. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by one of this year's debutants in the Players' Championship finals, William Borland. Thanks very much for the time. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, yeah. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Now you're coming to the end of your first year on the PDC main tour, but I want to rewind it back to the start for you in darts. Where did your interest in darts come from, and how did you get started?
Well, it started all with my family. My full family played it in local leagues and stuff, and I kind of just took it up as a young kid, played in the house, and then once I was old enough to play in the leagues, I joined the league, and then I started getting good. So then I started taking it a wee bit more serious, and then went over to the development tour. Started doing the development tour with my friends and stuff, and then I took it from there. Thought that I was good enough to become professional, and then that's what my heart was set out on.
So what was it like then going to the development tours? I think you're around 18, 19 at the time, going with your friends. I suppose in one way you want to do well, but in one way as well, you're just going there for a bit of fun with your friends. What was it like those early days?
Even in the early days, I always wanted to do well, you know what I mean? Because I thought I was good enough to win one. I thought I had the talent to win one, but obviously there's quite a lot of good talent on there, so I was unfortunate not to win one. But no, I always took it very serious, and I've always, as I said, I've always took like every game that I play, I've always took it serious. So, and it was good. It was good to try different things in local leagues and stuff. So I'm kind of glad that I did try the development tours and then find out how good it actually was.
So a few months after we see you play on the development tour for the first time, we see you at Q School at the start of 2016. How did you find that experience, 19 at the time, going up against probably some players that you've seen play for a lot of years before that? You picked up a few wins on the final day as well. What was it like to play in?
It was a great experience for me. At that time, obviously, I was playing some great darts in local competitions. I hit a 9-batter in a local comp in the November, and obviously I kept practicing up till the January, and I decided just before Christmas time to go to Q School. And fair enough, the first couple of days of that one never really went well, and to be fair, it was kind of upsetting not to do so good, because I thought I'd have done a lot better, but it made me a much better player, and it taught me a lot about myself, and I just kept going the way I was going, practicing, doing different things, and I said to myself the next time I went to school I would do things different, and I managed to get my card the next time I went.
Definitely, yeah. And towards the end of 2017, so a little while later, we saw you in Bridlington for the World Masters, a run to the last 48. What do you remember about that week, playing in a first major event for the first time like that?
It was a great experience. As I said, I never really done a lot of the BDO side due to the lack of sponsorship and stuff. But for the stuff that I did, like the Scottish Opens and that, I really enjoyed it. And to qualify for the British, for all that stuff was great, and it was a great experience. I was close a couple of times to qualifying for the World Championships as well for the BDO, but obviously again just missing out as well. But no, it was all great experience, and as I said, I learned a lot about myself, so I'm continuing to learn, and I'm loving it. And
just touching on the BDO, your progression continued. You got through the World Trophy qualifiers 2018. You're playing on TV for the first time, that last 32 against Conan Whitehead, get a win on your debut as well. What was the feeling like competing on a stage and with all the cameras there as well?
Obviously going back to the Welsh Open, that's when I qualified. Obviously when the draw came out that I played Conan, I knew I was going to be up against a tough player, so I just had the mentality just to go up and enjoy it. I had nothing to lose. Again, it was going to be a different experience that I was going to gain, and I'll again learn a lot about myself. So I just went up there with no fear and done the job and played well.
Back to the PDC, of course, we saw you carry on playing on the development tour, the Challenge Tour as well, some deep runs in events, semi-finals, quarter-finals, and 2019, so last year we see you back at Q School. You had your best run to date at that point, making a last 32. It was 3 years after your first Q School. Did you feel more confident going back that time round?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, as I said, after the first Q School, it took me a good few months to get back to properly practicing, because it did hurt me not doing so good, because I thought I'd have done better. But as I said, I've learned a lot about myself. I never gave up. But once it got out of my head and stuff, I just started practicing again, and then went through a good bunch of guys. I joined the East Ulster County team in that, and a great bunch of guys, and they kind of helped me as well. Alan helped me. The boy that runs the counties, Alan, he helped me a lot for development doing that as well. So and obviously like going away with them, it was just great, and it made me enjoy Darts a little bit more. Trying things like the Gold Cup weekend, the teams championships as well, that on the same weekend. It was just great.
And sticking to last year, another milestone for you last year was, of course, playing on the European Tour for the first time. You'd made a couple of appearances, one in Germany, one in the Czech Republic. How did you find those experiences playing on the PDC stage and with big crowds like that as well?
It was very, very nerve-wracking. I don't think, obviously, I never played to my full potential, but as I said again, I learned a lot about myself, and I'm looking forward to try and fix what I did wrong there. Hopefully next year, if everything goes back to normal, I can get back and try and qualify for a few of them to actually showcase my talent on stage.
And we've got to touch on the World Youth Championship at the end of last year as well. You knocked out Ted Everts in the last 16, just lose out to Keane Barry in the quarterfinals. We know how much talent there is in the development tour these days, but how did you reflect on that day, coming so close to making that world final?
As I said, to be fair, I was kind of lucky to win against Ted, going double-double. I had a couple of legs lead, but he was good all through the game and stuff, and I kind of dropped down. But the Keane Barry game, Keane played very, very well. He went 3-0 up on me, and I came back. But as I said, Keane's playing some darts just now. He's probably the best youth player in the world right now, I'd say. But the World Youth Championship there, I thought I'd done a lot better, like this year, like the last one there, than I did to the one we were just talking about.
Well, let's come on to this year then, and it's been a big year for you. You went to Q School at the start of the year, a run to the last 8 on the third day. You lose out in a decider, last 32 on the final day. But what was it like on that final day, knowing that you had a shot going into it to get that tour card, and what was the feeling like when you knew that you'd done enough and you were going to be on the tour?
That was the best feeling ever. I knew after beating Damien Heta that I would have got through no matter what because of the legs and stuff. I kind of got a wee bit excited, and then obviously I went on to lose to I think it was Connor Scott. But no, as soon as I knew that I'd done enough to get it, it was just the best feeling ever.
And it's probably not been the most ideal first year with everything that's gone on in the world in 2020, but we go back to the early months of the year, the start of the season, and we were under more normal circumstances. What were those first few weeks like on the tour, seeing all the big name players and going up against them and competing in those tournaments?
It's a great feeling, mate. Obviously, I'm playing some, as I said, I'm playing some good darts, but obviously the talent on the tour is just unbelievable, and it's just, again, it's all experience for me. I'm learning something new every weekend that I play in these types of tournaments. Again, this weekend for the Players' Championship Final, I'm going to learn a lot about myself again. So it's all like you're learning more and more about yourself every time you play. So I'm happy with that.
And in March we had that big break, 4 months with no PDC main tour action. How did you find that break? Did you use it to work on stuff on your game, practice, or did you take some time to sort of reflect on what you've achieved so far? How did you spend that break?
At the start, I practiced I practiced a couple of weeks into it, and I was doing a lot of online stuff. But then the online stuff was getting too like boring. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'd rather be playing either in like a competition, or I'd rather be away doing PDC stuff. So I kind of took a back seat from it. But I was working. I knew at the start of the Pro Tour season, I was missing doubles quite a lot. So yeah, I worked on my doubles, and when I came back to the summer series, it kind of showed that I was taking out some big checkouts and stuff. But no, as I said, I worked on my checking out side of the game more than anything on the lockdown.
We should give a mention as well to the management that you're under, Matt Ward, with the MDA promotions. They've got, like yourself, a lot of other players on the tour, the likes of Daryl Gurney in there as well. What's it like being a part of a team like that? And I suppose you've got players there that you can talk to if you've got any things to work on in your game, and sort of get a helping hand from them as well when you need to.
Yeah, as I said, it's a great bunch of guys. They're very, very helpful. Matt's got a great team. But as I said, we're all there to do our job, but we're all like we'll try and support each other as well. But obviously, if we were playing each other, then we would be going up to try and beat one another.
Yeah.
But no, they're a great bunch of guys.
Definitely. Well, before we let you go, let's touch on this weekend. You're in Coventry, your Players' Championship finals debut up against Ian White in the first round. Unfortunately, not in Minehead this year, the tournament, no fans, but how much are you looking forward to playing in this, and probably the first event PDC-wise, the TV events that you've qualified for based on your performances that you've had so far this year?
I'm looking forward to it. As I said, I've been practicing well. Again, been practicing on my kicking out side of the game as well. But I've played Ian a couple of times on the tour already, and I've had some great games. I'm looking forward to it. Ian's a great player, and most of all, I'm looking forward to just playing on my first TV event. Hopefully, it won't be my last, but I'm just looking forward to trying to showcase my talent on TV.
Definitely, and after that, it's going to be a busy weekend. After that, we've got Monday, the PDPA qualifier. We're not quite sure how many spots are going to be up for grabs for the World Championship, the last chance to get in. But have you got one eye on that at the moment, or is it just all focus on this weekend, and then when that comes round, try and get into the World Championship?
As I said, I'm just going to focus on this weekend first, and Monday will deal with itself. Kind of gutted that obviously I've been in the Worlds throughout the ProTour under the merit, but the results never went my way in the Winter Series. But I am focusing on the Players' Championship first, and then Monday will deal with itself when it comes along.
Excellent. Well, we wish you all the best for this weekend and the World Championship qualifier when it comes around, and thanks very much for your time, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks again to William for joining us. Now we'll finish up with some picks for Low 6. Big thanks to Low 6, who of course do present this show, and we did another contest during the Grand Slam, a contest on the Low 6 app, and myself and you, Burton, 5-all, couldn't split us this time round. We went the 8 last 16 games over the Friday and Saturday, and even you guys playing along at home, 17-way tie for that £100 prize pots. So 17 of you get 7 out of 8, not quite the perfect 8 out of 8, but we've got another chance this week. We're going to be doing a contest on Friday, the opening day of the Players' Championship finals, and we've picked out the 14 games that are currently set to be on the TV stage live on ITV4 on that Friday, and don't have time to go through all 14 games, so we'll go through the first 4 in that order of play on Friday. And first game up, it is the World Grand Prix finalist Dirk van Dijvenbode against Willie O'Connor. How do you see the first game going?
Not a bad way to get things going. Willie O'Connor, one of the more underrated players for a few years now, ever since he had that breakthrough run to Euro Tour final, I believe in Hamburg a couple years ago. Hasn't gotten nearly as much respect as he's probably deserved, but he's still been, one of those players who's, I think his ranking is fairly fair, just outside the top 32, and has been a fairly quality player when we've seen him on television. Dirk van Dijvenbode, there's been a little bit of inconsistency, but he's had a fantastic season. Was one of the players of the year before the COVID break, and then obviously making his first major final at the World Grand Prix. It's a tough match. But I'm going to go for the Irishman. I'm going to go for the Irishman to get over the line. I'll say 6-4.
Well, unlike last week, I'm going against you for this first game that we've got to pick. I'm going to go with Dirk van Dijvenbode, and he was a little bit unlucky, you've got to say, not to get through that group. One of the hardest groups there was in the Grand Slam last week, with Peter Wright, Devon Peterson and Ian White losing out to an inspired Ian White in that final group game, which put him out, but did perform pretty well in most of those games that he played. So I'll go with the big Dutchman on this occasion. Second game up is Michael Smith against Boris Krcmar. How do you see the second game going?
Yeah, Boris Krcmar is one of the players that I tipped. I can't recall if it was a summer autumn series, but one of those is a player that I thought was a dark horse to lift his first title. Someone way down the rankings, and okay, he obviously hasn't won a title, but he has improved remarkably over the last 4 or 5 months, and it shouldn't be unexpected. He's a multiple world champion in soft tip. He's clearly a quality competitor, but this will be his first real big opportunity, at least in a decade, since he played in the PDC Worlds on television. It might just be a step too far for him, at least right now. I think he's a player who we should look out for next year as a breakout performer in the PDC. But Michael Smith is a class above him. I'm going to go for Michael Smith to win this one, 6-3.
I'm with you on that one as well. I'm going to go with the world number 4, who had a great Grand Slam, looked title elect, could be one of those people picking up the title last week, but ran into the eventual champion Jose de Sousa. As you say, Boris has been a player that's come onto the tour. So he's had some good moments so far. Of course, we're going to see him in the World Championship next month as well. He's come through one of the qualifiers, so we're going to see a bit more of him on TV over the next few weeks and months. And I think just on this occasion, like you, I'm going to go with the more experienced man in that regard. So yeah, I'm going to go with Michael Smith. What about his World Cup partner, Rob Cross? He's the next game up, and he's going up against Jason Lowe. How do you see this game going?
This is one of the more difficult matches to pick. Rob Cross just maybe starting to see some signs that he's getting back towards his best, but he's still nowhere near it. Jason Lowe is one of the more underrated players in World Darts, and he's had a very good first year as a tour card holder this year. Maybe not as good as we might have expected from him, because we were talking very high about him early in the year. He is a quality competitor. And I'm going to go for him to win this match. I think he's going to get over the line. So I'm going to go Jason Lowe to upset the former world champion in a last leg decider.
Well, we're on the same lines for this one as well, because I've gone with Jason Lowe as well. I'm going with the upset in terms of the rankings. I think these two have played a couple of times on the floor on the Players' Championship events this year, and it is 1-1. And the last time that we saw Jason Lowe on our TV screens, at least, it was the UK Open, and he was pushing Michael van Gerwen all the way on that Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening session. I can't remember now, but that was a brilliant performance from him. Unlucky not to get that win over the world number one in the end, and a little shorter format this time around, race to 6. He's been playing that all year, maybe not on the TV as much, but yeah, like you, I'm going to go with the upset. And final game we're going to pick on the show, and it's a repeat of a game that we saw last week. It is Joe Cullen against Adam Hunt. How do you see this game going?
Yeah. What a week for Adam Hunt. Easily, at least in our opinion, his best performance of his career, getting through the group and making it to the last 16 and holding his own against Simon Whitlock in that match. But I don't see him duplicating the feat. Joe Cullen is one of the informed players in World Darts. And okay, he didn't get it done in the Grand Slam, and he really only has himself to blame for missing all those darts at double when he just needed one more leg against Van Gerwen to make sure that his goal differential was good enough, and he missed them. But it shouldn't take too much away from him, because he knows that was just a blip. He's the better player right now. He's the better player overall. He's one of the best players in the world right now. Maybe this will even be his week overall, but it starts in the first round, and it starts with Joe Cullen getting over the line. I'm going to go 6-1.
Yeah, that was a big disappointment last week. Joe missing those, can't call them match darts, but maybe getting through the group darts against Michael van Gerwen, and had a little bit of time to get over that disappointing night that he had. And got to think as well, before that and during the Players' Championships that we've had recently, when we're on the European Tour, he has been playing some good stuff. And again, like you say, with Adam Hunt, great for him last week. First win that he had in 8 years on TV, as I said. But even that game against Joe Cullen as well, that he lost 300 plus checkouts. It was a 1-6-4 finish from Joe Cullen that won the game in the decider. So hopefully we'll get some more fireworks like that between the two. I think it will be a little bit closer than you're calling, but like you, I'm going to go with the more higher up man in the rankings at the moment. I'll go with Joe Cullen. And you guys listening as well, get involved. Download the Low 6 app. 18 plus, UK residents only. T&Cs apply. Please gamble responsibly. BeGambleAware.org. And always do in recent weeks. If you can get 14 out of 14 this time round, chance to be invited on the show next time round as our guest tips for the week.
Yeah, although I guess we'll have, maybe not next time because there won't be a competition, but in a couple of weeks for one of our World Championship previews, we'll have you come on and give your tips and make fools of us both. Anything else for this week?
Got to say, as always, big thank you to our guests for coming on. Big thank you to everyone for listening. Should give a shout out as well. We've got the Players' Championship finals going on this weekend in Coventry. We've also got the final of the PDC World Youth Championship. Joe Davis and Bradley Brooks, two young gentlemen who have been on the show this year, who we've had the pleasure of chatting to, so wish them the best of luck in the final on Sunday. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be chatting to the boss, the PDC chairman, Barry Hearn, when you're listening to this on Thursday, chatting to him on Friday afternoon. So if you've got any questions, if you're listening to this now on the Thursday, do tweet us at Weekly Dartscast. And I guess depending on how time sensitive some of the things that come out from it, might see it come out over the weekend. If not, he'll be a guest on the show next week.
Yes, indeed. And thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to our sponsors, our Patreons, and our guests. And thanks to Darts for helping give us something to distract ourselves from what has not been the best of years. It's almost over. The best time of the year is almost upon us. Dartsmith is just a couple weeks away. So get out your Dartsmith advent calendars. Hang tight. About to get a bit like Dartsmith.